Welcome, and now we're back, and I have Marcelo here from ACFM Gaming, and I have Bragondorn. Where are you from, Bragondorn? I feel like I asked you this last time.
I'm from Vermont.
Ooh.
Just
Today...
currently...
Go on. No?
Well, I was going to say it's currently experiencing a bit of a heat wave right now.
Define heat wave. Desert heat wave?
Oh, almost. I mean, it's warm for Vermont, definitely. Because we've been having temperatures like... Yeah, we've been having temperatures of about 93 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 33 Celsius.
I was going to say, we're at hitting about 30 where I am in the UK. A little bit higher, a little bit lower, depending on what part of the UK you're in.
So I guess we're kind of experiencing the same temperature then. Interesting.
And you're in South America, Marcelo?
Yeah, and I'm in the Caribbean, actually.
Ah. We actually hit like 37 a little while ago, which is
like 36.
Nice and toasty.
Yeah, that's aircon kind of temperature for me, and we don't really have much aircon here, so not comfy.
I decided against it because it's just too expensive with the electricity. Yeah, we have to have it on the whole day, so probably just get an apartment that is breezy, and that's what we did. So really nice windows and airflow.
Well, you know where there isn't much airflow? Kharak.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be looking at the Deserts of Kharak Expedition Guide, as you can see here. And just so you all know, yep, we got your clearance. Yep. And here we go. Now, the important thing to note about Deserts of Kharak, and in particular this expedition guide, is when Homeworld 1 came out, there was a beautiful, detailed and complex set of lore that came in the manual. And there was so much story in the Kifs and the Guide Stone and everything else in that, that led to it being a really, really in-depth and engrossing story, which just is really nice. And in Deserts of Kharak, the Guide Stone plays a big part in it without giving you too much of a spoiler. And the importance of the other wrecks and everything else that you find in there is a huge gameplay mechanic. Would you like to add anything to this, Marcelo or Dawn?
Well, on my part, I'm just like interjecting here before Dawn. Sorry about that. I still have the expedition guide from not the expedition guide, the manual from the original Homeworld, the hard disk CD-ROM copy that I had, and actually the print paper material outlasted the CD, which got eaten by fungi. So
interesting. I have a digital copy around because I got it as part of some package thing, and I got sent games like once a month kind of thing when I bought a computer. So
that's really cool.
It arrived and it was just like, ooh, I don't know anything about this game, let's play it. And then I ended up spending so much time on it and absolutely loving it. I got so excited when I heard there was going to be a remaster for it. Do you have anything you want to add at this point, Dawn?
Well, no, I don't have a whole lot because my interest in the Homeworld was always, like, I've only really been playing it for a year and a half or so.
Ah,
so
you're a newbie.
I'd see it. Yeah, I'm a newbie. So when I saw it, though, I'm looking around like, oh, I love the design of these vehicles. They look cool, and oh, this is neat. It seems to have a lot of, because there's so many references to things in the game that you hear, and I'm thinking, wow, what is that about? What is that connected to? What is that a part of? So I began reading. I've been reading bits and pieces here and there.
Part of the story, it touches on a few different things, and one is the lost group of people kind of thing, and rediscovering their past and their place in the galaxy, really, which is an interesting mythology point of view. that it touches on.
The whole that they're like the exiled
Yes, literally, yes.
remnants of a fallen empire.
Almost the last bastion of it, in some respects.
Yeah, in some cases, I think we also mentioned this in our previous talks about it, is that it's kind of like an adaptation of the Exodus book from
Yes.
Exactly.
And at one point we mentioned that this is also something that was originally planned, I believe, as a Battlestar Galactica game, but the
Which
rights
is
didn't come
also-
through.
Which was
Yeah.
also heavily based off of that.
Yes.
Yeah, of the Exodus.
Right down to them having, I think, 40,000 people or so.
Yeah, you did mention that, and also some of the names of the locations that appear in the first Homeworld game. They also have like biblical references.
Garden of Gethsemane and stuff.
I mean, I said biblical, but it's both the, all the three main Judeo-Christian and
Yes, the
Islamic
cultural references
religions, yeah.
overlap quite a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah. Specifically, today we're going to focus on the vehicle manifest because they're just so cool.
Yeah, we just like big trucks and cars.
Yeah. And this is something that didn't exist obviously in the paper version, but we can actually go in here and we can like spin the models and actually see things that you wouldn't normally see unless you pause the game. That is when it wants to load.
See them in much closer detail than you could in the game.
That is also
yeah.
true.
Base runner in service.
Oh, right. So here we are with the base runner.
Base runner.
This is probably the most iconic thing, other than the carrier, for Deserts of Kharak, because it's one of the first things you get to play with, and it has multi-use purposes in its defensive and recon abilities, and in the multiplayer for artifacts and such as well.
It's one of those vehicles that you keep using throughout the progression of the game.
Yes.
Like you said, not just in the single player, but also in multiplayer, because what happens is, in most multiplayer games, is that you move from the small scout cars, assault guns, and then you end up with just the large cruisers, and then you tend to ignore the smaller craft. But this one you use throughout the game.
It has specific abilities that are particularly useful. In multiplayer, I like to use them to lock down areas using turrets, because they're the only ones that can really deploy turrets. But then the recon drone is very, very useful as well.
Yeah, that is pretty much what I was doing the last match we had, just sitting there and popping out recon drones.
They have reasonable amounts of defense as well, and their ability to do the artifact thing is important both in single player and in multiplayer, in particular for the multiplayer mode where artifacts matter.
Yeah.
These come with, obviously, as you can see here, 6 giant wheels. Now, I am a little surprised that they're not double wheels on each side, but then again, they have quite thick treads, and then you're going over desert, mostly loose sand and such, that you need traction.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if they're 4 or 6 wheel drive, but I would presume at least 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, at least 4, if not 6. It would make sense for 6.
It would make sense, yeah. I mean, they might even have a transmission shift thing for it. I do not expect this to be a 2-wheel drive thing. That would be pointless. There'd be no redundancy in that whatsoever.
Yeah, you get one set of wheels stuck and you're stuck forever. It makes sense for this to be an all-wheel drive.
Yeah, or you just have 2 wheels in the air and that's your drive wheels and that's it, you're gone.
Exactly.
Saying that though, it does have the bull bars at the front, which gives the implication that a winch system could be useful and also to protect it. And considering the bull bars don't extend all the way to each side and up and down, like it doesn't even protect the cockpit, I would hazard that this is highly likely to be in part the winch system.
Yeah, just
It makes sense, and I would like to say something here is that the reference in the previous state of this game, when it was called Hardware Shipbreakers,
yes.
there were more versions of the base runner, and they even had diagrams, like cutaways, in which they show that there's a vehicle bay and a hangar on top of the, that space. Yeah, is divided in two. It has like a I guess a mezzanine, if we want to use an architectural term rather than a deck. So it actually fits one of the small LAVs in it, like scale-wise. The models do scale like that.
Okay.
And,
yeah, I didn't know that.
And they had like recovery versions of them, so you could, one had a crane and all that. So yeah, basically they can tow or winch things.
I think that would be really cool in terms of lore and in the world, but I'm not convinced some of that would be useful in terms of actual gameplay.
Yeah, unless you make like a desert vehicle thing simulator, that's should be a completely different game.
You mean like spin tires, but yes,
but with with
literally spinning tires.
Class. Yeah,
literally. But like that kind of sounds like a good idea though, of having various base runners that specialize in the tasks that a base runner could.
Yeah.
Well,
there is a trailer that they released, and it even showed a farming version of that.
Yeah, I would expect this to be, to use the Warhammer 40k thing, the STC version, and then they would customize like to a farming version, maybe one that has trailers for like cargo hauling. One that's like more long range, has fuel canisters on the sides and stuff, extra wheels and things on it. Recovery versions required kind of thing. Bulldozer.
Almost like a giant version of like say a Humvee.
Yeah,
where,
pretty much.
You could armor it up and arm it and turn it into a patrol vehicle, or you could take some armor down.
You could strip this turret out, get rid of the upper bay, and put a big ass turret on the top. To be honest, or missiles. Even a field hospital in here.
I was about to say a medical transport.
Yeah.
Or just a mobile weapons platform that's small. Well, small.
I was gonna say that this would be kind of like the equivalent of a frigate, if I'm not mistaken, in the Homeworld like space games, because they do kind of like have like a direct comparison unit with the space one.
Yes,
kind of like that.
The common hull and then the different variants depending on purpose.
Yeah.
That Homeworld is very good at doing that, and we'll see later on other examples of them doing that.
Exactly, which makes a lot more sense than designing a new vehicle for every job. You just have one hull, and then have every single job, every single...
From a cost perspective, you want something similar because if you're contracting stuff out, it's cheaper. From the practicality standpoint, replaceable parts. If you have so many unique things, you have to have such a huge inventory of parts that you're never going to use.
And the facilities to manufacture them versus having one vehicle. You just take a self-contained module that's a medical bay or a self-contained repair bay or whatever you need, bolted on the back of your vehicle, and there you go. And then you can just crank out these common hulls and these modules for whatever you need. Okay, we need this many of these modules and this many repair modules.
I mean, you look at some of vehicles. I believe it's some of the cruisers that the US use. They have a mission module section where they can literally have an entire like almost containerized mission module that can be loaded on and off the ship as required.
Exactly.
And many of the current military designs for soon implementation and near future implementation are using common hulls with modular stuff. And if you look at historically, for example, many tank hunter vehicles, they are turretless versions of the same hull that are modified, and then you have like, for example, the Churchill tank and the Churchill AFV, the Churchill ARV, the engineer vehicles, the bridge layers and such. They're all the same common hull with equivalent, with appropriate modifications for whatever the task is needed. Like Hobart's Funnies, the duck drive tank that had the amphibious tank that had the skirts that came up and such. The one that had the mine clearing flails at the front. All sorts of weird and wonderful things designed for D-Day.
The flail tank.
Yeah. And the one that has like the trailer at the back with the fuel for the flame cannon and stuff on it. But that's what I would expect to be in a how to put this, in a hard sci-fi setting to have common hulls and such like that. In a fantasy setting, you have infinite money, infinite resources, you do what you want.
Yeah, this crazy thing that just does this thing and this crazy thing for that thing.
Or you go the cheap route and you have one ship that basically is copy and pasted across everything in that battle scene. You're just like, you only have one ship design? What?
I have to say, this is one of the things that I really hated. One of the many things that I really hated about the Starship Troopers movie is that.
You say that, but if you actually look at the designs and the models they'd made, because all of those models were physically made.
Yeah. I mean,
they
that's
actually
good
did
thing.
a couple of different ones for it. When you
Really?
yeah,
They look like the same kind of cruiser to me.
I'll send you some links later. There are slight variants on them.
Oh, nice.
Because I've seen some of the model stuff for it, and
Well, I guess
some
one
development
less
for it.
thing to dislike then.
Now, if you look at the Roughneck series, they copy and paste stuff, but that's CG and a much lower budget.
Yeah, but it's funny how a lower budget forces them to be slightly more realistic.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're going to have in a military situation. Even if you have a decently big budget, you don't want to be running at 100%. You want to save as much as possible so that you'll have extra in a tight situation.
Yes.
That'll
True.
just make it
Yeah.
easier on you and everybody else.
One of the big things as well with these games, I'll switch to this version,
Rachel here.
is that having civilian versions of these craft is really important and really practical. You can see the elevator here. And it's just one of these things that no military is just the armoured vehicles. There is a huge logistics train behind them, including civilian contractors and just people going out there, doctors, medics, engineers, that are hugely involved. And one of the first groups of people you send to a combat zone are the engineers to build your bases.
You know what this makes me think of is the Ural truck for the Russian military.
Yeah.
I could almost think of that as like the real life equivalent of the base runner, because they make so many of them and there's so many different versions for pretty much every single task you can think of, and they're in both military and civilian work. So you'll see military Urals with rockets on them and troop transports and medical Urals.
There was
Then
a
you'll
similar
drive
way
around
to
and
the
you'll
Ford.
go to a fire station and it's just a bunch of Urals painted red with some.
It's like Ford and General
fire hoses on the
Motors did a
back.
lot of trucks as well for the US military, but there are very similar versions that are civilian use. In this design, if we do a direct comparison of these two,
Rachel here.
you'll notice here there is a turret thing of I'm not 100% convinced that maybe there's a Gatling turret.
Yeah, it's like a twin Gatling.
Base runner
But this
in
one has a
service.
smaller Gatling because reasons. But we ditch, if we look at these two things here,
Rachel
that
here.
switches to this rotational point. I don't know what that does.
It's
I
a
mean-
repair beam.
Is that the repair beam from there?
Yeah.
Does it
It
pop up and
projects
do it?
outwards. Yeah.
Ah, okay, that makes sense then.
And you'll see that is a similar or even the same design of the support cruiser. That has two of those on the sides.
Ah, okay. And there's
But this one
two
pops up.
science module things, I guess, there, and then whatever is deploys in that at the back.
Yeah. That trades out the hangar and the elevator for the drone to some kind of like what you were saying, like a mission package, like a science package.
Yeah, I would expect to be most of this thing from just about here and then to here. This entire section would probably be the module that you would replace, and that this whole section here is the standard design with maybe a few panels that could be replaced with which actually have connection points and things.
Yeah.
That would be my expectation with this design. Can I move on to the LAV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Light attack vehicle.
The LAV,
in
as you,
service.
I'll do a quick comparison here. Look at the
Base
size of
runner
the
in
people,
service.
and then the
Light
LAV.
attack vehicle in service.
It's a bit more of a
Yeah.
smaller scale, almost. I think of it as like an MRAP.
Yeah.
Those balloon tires on.
Yeah, but then it's also they've got to keep a light tread lightly on the desert in some respects.
Mhm.
So it's not necessarily these could be full of air; they could be full of other gas as well. Although it
True.
would need to be something that they
Nitrogen
could,
or something like that.
yeah, something that
I
they could
think the
actually
Ultra
produce there.
class. Don't. I think you guys should know the Ultra class trucks. I think they use nitrogen, right?
I'm not familiar of that.
It would make much more sense to use because nitrogen isn't going to react as dramatically to changing temperature and air pressure than just blowing them up with air.
Yeah, I mean, whatever they use has to be something that they can use in the field, because all of these things are designed for long endurance and desert conditions.
Yeah,
So,
I imagine something that big would have its own self-generating nitrogen system on it.
or extracting from the thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you could There's would already be so many uses for something like that.
Yeah.
You could use it for your tires, for your shocks, for
Mhm.
anything that requires pressurized gas, basically, because nitrogen is nice and
And these
It's
are
nice,
designed. You can see there's little mirrors in
non-reactive.
here, but I'm not convinced that you could even see these mirrors, to be honest. So,
Mhm. Like see out of them, like maybe from that like tiny triangular.
to be
window
honest, I don't
thing,
even know if you sit in the middle or on each side in this. But,
Yeah, so I think there's a drawing that shows one of the concept arts that shows like the crew like hanging, like they have like hammocks and tents hanging out from the LAV, and they're just like resting.
I highly
there.
advise taking a look at the Blackbird Interactive Facebook
Yeah.
group, because
Definitely.
they do a lot of arts, particularly on Fridays, concept art, fan art and stuff, and there's so much good content on there, because many fans of the game just are so passionate about it. They will just pump out the art, and there's so much good content. Oh, I wish I could show you all
Is
of
it-
it.
I think
Hold on a second.
overall. No, go ahead.
Are those? No, just a quick question. Are those people animated? I think I
Yes,
just
they are slightly.
Yeah,
the
they
hands
move.
they just moved
They
a little
move.
bit.
Yeah, I'm watching this on that tiny screen. So.
Yes,
What were you
they're
saying,
animated.
Marcelo?
Oh no, I was gonna say well, two things. The first is that the people like the soldiers there, they're wearing environmental suits, and that's something that they mention in the manual for the first Homeworld. And it's because we have to remember that Kharak is a quote unquote desert planet, but it's
Yes.
undergoing a big change, and that is basically like runaway desertification, and it basically its core I think stopped moving, something like that, like its geological activity stopped, so it's slowly going the Mars way. That's kind of like what they say. So in the equator of that planet, people cannot survive as we do here. I mean, as close as I am to the equator of Earth, and it's really hard sometimes. Like it's they say in the lore that it reaches the boiling point of water.
There's
So
also
that's-
the dust storms, and
Mhm.
in particular in multiplayer and in certain single player missions, dust storms will just force you to not do anything, or they will basically be the end of a multiplayer game. Is you have to complete this objective before the dust storm hits, because you just can't otherwise.
True. Yeah,
Like
and that
in,
also leads to the size of the vehicle, because it's a recon craft. It's you think it's a scout car, but it has basically kind of like the size of a
Oh, that
Like,
is like a bus kind of thing.
yeah,
It's got to
kind
have
of.
supplies in there
Yeah.
to last for a
Mhm.
while. Energy
Supplies,
production, ammunition.
machinery. Yeah, the
Mhm.
machinery you need, life support,
And this
just the
is a
heavy
combat
aspects of the
vehicle as well.
combat.
Yeah,
So
they have to live off it, and also recon and do combat.
I
Which I'm
believe we
surprised
discussed.
they didn't.
Go on.
I'm surprised they didn't paint it a bit more sand colored. I mean, it's yellow, but it still kind of stands out with that coloration.
Somewhat, but then if you look at some of the mottled camo for like sea ships and stuff, and the weird like digital camos and stuff you can get, it's more to break up the shape, the silhouette, rather than be fully camouflaged.
True.
Because the shading and stuff and shadows and just
Yeah. And
This
with
is-
with the type of technology these guys are toting around and their enemies are toting around, they more than likely will be able to spot a vehicle like this,
True.
regardless of whether it's camouflage or not. Just
and
for-
this in particular,
It makes
the
sense.
different classes tend to be, this is fast moving, whereas the other ones are designed with armor because they know they're going to get hit, and so
Mhm.
actual camouflage is not really something that fully makes sense. I was going to comment on these guys because they do have rebreather packs and they do have filters on their masks.
They got their little still suits, basically.
Yeah. Which
And
is
I think they maybe also have those cooling vests. I don't know, like
very
waterproof.
likely, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what these packs are. They could be cooling packs and they could be rebreathers on the masks itself. Which is more likely the case since there's no actual pipe that goes from... There's no visible pipe anyway connecting them.
Yeah, there could be something...
So that's probably a cooling pack with
suit.
some sort of heat dissipator on it. Yeah.
Yeah, just something nice to keep them cool, recycle body moisture and all that.
The interesting thing with these is I'm pretty sure these are some sort of sensor domes and you have multiple ones on a different craft. But ammunition is something that I always find people in games and in film and anything visual or model wise, they will put in tons of guns but forget that you need to have ammunition storage and cooling on rapid fire things.
Yeah.
So this type of weapon, the amount of rounds it can fire per second, you would expend the entirety of the thing in here in just a few moments of firing.
Yeah.
At least that's the theory, and then how would the ammo get there? Presumably it goes up through the center core and then out and splits to the two guns. And moving the ammo and stuff has to be a really clever way of doing that without making it a vulnerable spot. Like hitting this point here would probably blow the entire turret up and the the magazine up. But it's always an interesting thing to try and decipher how this is done, because if you look at a lot of real life vehicles, particularly aircraft and such, the limited amount of ammunition they carry and how they are very much focused on like burst fire and such. But yeah.
And they also heat up.
Yes, they heat up. And in a desert environment.
Yeah, another thing, and when you're in a desert environment and it's getting almost boiling point, you're definitely going to want to have some sort of cooling. Yes. It should make sense for to have the multi-barrel weapons on pretty much almost everything, because you have less wear on the
yes, because also repairing things in the desert environment is not easy.
Exactly, you have less wear and you also have cooling because there's less shots being. You can have a high rate of fire, but fire less shots per barrel.
I would very much hope these are designed so that if one jams, it does not force the other one to jam, like to stop moving as well, for redundancy.
Yeah, independent
drive systems,
ammunition, and drive systems. Which, by the way, it just occurred to me that I think the fire rates on these weapons are actually quite low. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I need to see what it sounds like.
We can jump into game later and have a muck around, but
yeah, because I'm thinking if they're keeping their rate of fire nice and low, that means, of course, ammo consumption and cooling and wear and just everything goes way down because you don't have, you're not firing as many rounds, but firing it out of the.
Yeah. Enough simulation concentrated firepower to destroy them for. Yep. Now, interesting things about these designs is the grill at the front and this thing that looks like it flips down. Not entirely sure why, but hey. And then the actual overall aerodynamic features of it to make it reasonably fast and potentially also cutting through deserts terrain.
Although having the grill right there without any sort of real protection would be a little bit problematic.
Indeed. There's going to be a particularly good filtration system for that.
Or maybe shutters. Or just have it vent through the top of the vehicle like a snorkel or something.
I suspect it probably pushes at the bottom because there's no obvious other thing. Maybe this. But this seems like a long way to carry any dust through the vehicle. Even the suspension systems, I'm not convinced are 100% protected when you're going over that much dust, because you can see the exposed parts there. I would have expected them to be covered more. especially fast-moving things like this, and the weird eddies you'll get from just all the way that the air moves around. Right, I'm going to move on to the Salvager, unless there's any other comments on this one.
Nope.
I'm good to go.
Salvager standing by.
Now, the Salvager is a different design entirely to what we've seen. For a start, it's tracked, and it's on a rotating central thing there. And the entire hull is a very different design with this giant box at the back, which looks like it can be detached.
Mm-hmm. It's perhaps the one that looks the most like like an excavator or a crane today.
Yes, yeah. It's got these two tools at the bottom. The molecular disassembler, phase disassembler technology, and then the little claw. It's also not so little, I should probably say. And this is a crew of 1, interestingly. For this size, a crew of 1.
Just one guy in that cockpit over there, and then I guess that access is for maintenance. Under the 5, under the number 5, there's kind of like an access, but it's
Well, I would say it's probably maintenance and general thing, because he's going to be in there for a while. He's got his storage and everything else in there. And then there's power plant for everything, because a phase disassembler probably uses a fair amount of power.
Yeah, it sounds like it would suck up a lot of power.
Yeah. That's as far as I can zoom in.
Interestingly, I don't know about you guys, but to me those tracks seem a bit small for a vehicle like this. It seems like something like this would need longer tracks, just to not just keep the weight spread out, but to make it more
I think it should be
rotates.
longer at the back.
Mm-hmm.
At least to cover this, but then if you go longer at the back, this thing can rotate 360. You need to go longer in every direction to do that.
Exactly, so they need to pull those tracks out a bit more, not just, it would make it more stable, and it would also help spread the weight out, because you're going to be going out on sand. Those tracks
This
nice
looks
and
okay
wide.
on this side, like the spacing between them for stability if you were to rotate it, but
and the width, but not
this
the length.
looks like it needs to be slightly longer.
Yeah, because if you look at tracks on, like, say, a heavy crane, the track extends to pretty much almost the entire length of the vehicle in both directions, and maybe in some cases a little bit beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, I would, with this type of vehicle as well, potentially even have the tracks angle go the other way around.
Exactly, so you can climb.
Yes.
Easier.
But that's just my thing. I'm
Although
not
this
an engineering
design,
guy.
having them splayed out like that, does help to
For stability.
spread the weight out. Yeah, exactly. Spread the weight out over a larger area
Oh yeah, the
than if you were to just have
because then you have less actual mass, less force acting on any particular point, and then in theory you won't dig in too much.
have to worry about climbing because you're just sitting on the top. But still, you might want to put at least a little bit of that design in.
This thing here looks interesting. I'm not sure what that is. And this has a little sticky out bit. It's interesting the degree blades and stuff in these. There's that little dome thing I was mentioning. It's probably just a computer center and stuff. I reckon a lot of this is effectively fly-by-wire.
Yeah, interesting thing that I had, just looking at that little white sensor there, it reminds me a lot of the sensors you see on, like, say, the experimental self-driving vehicles, like, what was it, the Terramax looking, like that,
Or even just Google
it's like a
Cars
military,
sort of thing.
a military transport vehicle that was self-driving, and like the little self-driving taxis, they'd have a sensor similar to that.
Yes.
Which might actually make sense, especially with a crew of one. The crew member would set a destination and then wait for the vehicle to drive there while, calibrating all the systems that you would need to complete specific jobs.
This suspension thing here with this drum always has me a little bit confused as to what's going on, and like pushing it forward, but then it doesn't get very far forward. It's kind of a chin,
like
but not.
I think the thing moves together.
But
Right?
it's moving both tools together at the same time when you push it out.
Yeah, exactly. Which is weird.
I think it might be fixed to the nose, and that the
But
tools
then
are
why
just
is this like this? It just seems weird.
they could lock and unlock to it so that when it's transporting, you have the tools locked into something, and then when you want to move them,
I guess
they'll
they could
unlock
fold
and
under
rotate away.
in some way, but yeah.
I mean, the arm, the claw arm thingy is. Wait a second. Maybe that's not a claw. It's not meant to grab. Look, you see that it doesn't have any articulation in it.
True. That was actually something I was about to bring up. Is that claw does not look like it has a huge amount of freedom of
Yeah,
Isn't it
movement.
more of a
Or-
tractor beam
It's not a-
thing?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
exactly.
Like the thing, the disassembler is on the right, and
Yes.
then on the left, I guess, is the magnetic thingy that brings in the
Yeah.
materials, I guess.
Now, in the description, it does mention it also has demolition charge dispensers.
And it shoots them out like a grenade, and
I'm guessing it's
It could
probably
be-
this black section.
That looks like perhaps an intake.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking, but then
Like
I
a
can't
vent
see where the
or-
demo charges are launched from, unless it's from these.
I think they always come out. They could be that little. See the little white door right
Up here?
right at the back?
yeah,
Could be
like
that.
a silo. Yeah,
A little
Maybe.
silo, and there's
yeah, that looks like a silo.
It looks
And
like it's
then
got
the-
hatch
on a
things on
ship.
it.
Yeah, it's got the little hinges, and like it opens up. The charge pops out. Might have maybe a little rocket motor to boost it and to steer it to where it needs to go. And then
I
That
think
makes
that's
sense.
probably a little bit expensive to put the charge in. It's possible, but if
True,
you're going to
true,
blow
yeah,
shit
the-
up, I'd probably just shove it out of a thing, like one of these.
cheaper to just have a little turret.
Yeah. Alright,
Let's take a look at the
let's go
larger
up another
ones.
class to the
Armored
AAVs.
assault online.
Now this track section is much better. There's a lot more stability here, although it doesn't look like it can climb, and there isn't clearly... I mean, there looks like some articulation, but not much on the different track points.
I have to say that the hull, it kind of like, to me, it resembles a Sherman tank in a way.
Somewhat.
The front of it and the
Yeah.
Some of the older-ish ones, maybe.
Mhm.
I suppose if you had the whole thing, because more modern tanks have somewhat rounded armor, and this is more, well, directly
more
angled
slant.
stuff. But then you get to the turret, and then you try and
Yeah.
figure out, I presume much this is magazine and power plant, but yeah.
I would say
That's-
the magazine is stored in the hull.
Oh yeah,
Because usually
I would
those
say
have a drum,
it's
and that is
probably in there. And then you got the power plant
Unless-
at the back, and
yeah.
transmission, and then probably crew just behind the armored plating here.
Mhm.
That would be my expectation, probably on the lower section.
Look at those gigantic smoke canisters.
Yeah. Oh, are they smoke or they
They do pop smoke.
I just smoked this one. I can't remember offhand.
Yeah, you can
Crystalline
see,
smoke,
yeah.
yeah.
Smoke cat.
Yeah.
But they're not
Uh,
exactly refillable.
Mm-hmm. The guy has to come out the door,
Climb the ladder,
carrying
and lean
yeah,
over.
much, yeah.
Looking
One
at
each.
this, there's a little thing I want to
Sure.
bring up about this, which goes to any sort of armored fighting vehicle, especially something like a tank, is generally with a tank, you have your three focuses, which is firepower, protection, and mobility.
Mobility.
Exactly. And the thing about, firepower, this guy looks pretty well off. Looks like a Gatling version of your average tank destroyer gun, and lots of sensors so you can detect and accurately target and fire. Protection is where I'm a little iffy on this, because of course you've got straight sides on straight armor on the sides, which isn't a huge deal, but this vehicle is big, and part
yeah.
of the whole concept of protection with a tank isn't just you can deflect big bullets. it's also concealability, the ability for a tank to, be hard to target and to also be able to conceal itself behind terrain and avoid detection. Because when it comes to tank warfare, more likely than not, the enemy's going to be carrying, they're not going to just, you develop a tank with super heavy armor that can deflect huge rounds. The enemy's not going to be like, oh, well, I guess we'll just shoot it till it dies. No, the enemy's going to develop a round that will go through your armor in as few shots as possible, which means that you're going to want, your focus is not just going to be protection with armor, but to make yourself hard to find. Because more likely than not, the enemy is going to be able to take you out in a single shot.
I mean, you tend to go with, from what I've seen, the light tanks are high mobility, but overall, more modern tank designs are low profile as well, to give you a low silhouette.
Which this is not. This thing is huge, and it looks like it might weigh excess of 200 or 300 tons, which isn't good when you want to sit on top of the sand.
Because we can't see the crew area here. By the way, the lights look a bit funny.
And it doesn't have any.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pop out for a couple seconds.
Yeah. Okay. But the thing that gets me in this is the hull. The crew section is probably low in the hull, but the entire turret's automated.
Yeah, it is.
So
you can see that there's no viewing port out of it, just like cameras and stuff. So
yes. So in that sense, it's like some of the modern tanks now. The crew, you get a driver and a gunner. Well, yeah, driver, gunner, commander kind of thing, but one has double role. And then the turret is now fully automated, auto-loader and everything. And that's the most risky part. You just kind of sit behind the horizon and then pop up your turret, fire. And with this, what you can do it is in the desert environment as well. You can just pop it on the edge of a thing, trying to only make its gun visible.
Like a hold down position thing.
Pretty much, yeah. And it looks like there are particular articulation points here that you could actually angle the turret in some ways.
Yeah.
And then you've obviously got the full 360 rotation. And
I was wondering, are those 4 things periscopes or something like that?
Probably.
Like an early warning system?
It could be related to in just sensing what's around it, but it could also be sensing things for the turret and finding its position and elevation and such, and just safety things for it. Say, I'm facing this way and or I'm not, kind of thing. In the same way we discussed the way the other domes are looking at the environment, they could be doing similar sorts of things because they do stick up above the hull in particular. So they could be involved in that aspect of it. Now, I was mentioning here, this light, I think they mucked up the model here.
Yeah, it's misaligned texture.
Yeah.
Wait, no, it's, like you say, it's a model.
Yeah, it's a copy and paste, and then there's an angled thing going on there. It's a bit odd.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a 3D error, actually. It's not a...
Yeah.
The texture is the same, but the...
Oh, the texture's mirrored correctly, but there's an angle going for here that probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's a 3D error.
Yeah.
And now we have to check that that's present in game, because remember that we found one of the vehicles that had like missing faces inside.
Yes.
And then I guess...
I mean, if you look from this angle, you can see some interesting 4 lines there.
Yeah.
And we come back to the front. This is solid.
Yeah.
Another design thing that, since I wasn't here, I wasn't able to bring up, but that I thought was kind of interesting, or potential problem, is the break in the tracks, which gives you a nice little place right in the front where you could bottom out and get hung up.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
As it is, the tracks in this I think is a very poorly designed thing, because you can look through here.
Yeah, and
you can sort of just see it's really low down to the ground as is.
Yeah.
You look at pretty much every single armored or every single tracked vehicle you can find, with the exception of, say, certain snow crawlers, is they have one continuous track. I mean, track maintenance is terrible, and if you have to maintain 4 sets of tracks versus 2, that can make a huge difference. And the vehicles that you see that do have multiple sets of tracks are usually sitting very high off the ground because, you know, once
Different
again, you
purpose.
can bottom out like that.
I would expect with these, if I was designing this, I would
They
probably use
raise.
a single set of tracks, not necessarily raised, but able to elevate and change
Oh
elevation.
yeah, adjustable. That would help a lot.
Because then
especially
you can have them, you can be high off the ground when you're doing your mobility, then you lower yourself
Are-
down when you're doing hull down action,
Are you talking like the one from the Thundercats?
possibly. I can't remember offhand. But it's almost to the same extent that when you have a crane and it has the outriggers that come out to stabilize it, that's sort of what I would expect of something like this, and the elevating up and down, moving around.
Like
Or
some sort
even-
of like a hydraulic suspension.
Yeah, or like hydraulics on buses when they have the ones that actually have the wheelchair access.
Mhm.
Let's move into this one,
Missile battery online.
which is basically the same. I'm going to flick between the two.
Armored assault online.
It's
Missile battery
basically the same
online.
hull.
Armored assault
It
online.
just adds
Missile
the
battery
two
online.
how do you call those? Like the two legs, like anti-aircraft batteries.
Oh,
Use.
the stability doing the outriggers here.
Yeah.
the outriggers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which I feel would make more sense on a heavy artillery piece than a rocket.
This is meant to be more mobile though. This is
Missile
meant to
battery
be
online.
somewhat more static, I guess, when firing because of the the thrust from the missiles and such.
True, but I mean they're missiles. They're directing a lot of their thrust out. You're not taking
necessarily.
the full
There
recoil
isn't
of like say a gun.
there
yeah,
isn't
true.
much in the way of exhaust here. So
And yeah, SAMs do have outriggers. Now I think about it, so that
Mhm.
yeah, that makes sense.
I can't angle this.
Although
the way
once
I
again,
want
you have the whole concealability problem going on.
to. Yeah, but this is
Not
this
only
is
is
a
this-
not frontline vehicle though. This one, so it
Not
matters less.
not only is it not only is it now taller, it's painted blaze orange.
Yes, because we need to know where the safety thing goes.
They're these guys. The coalition are a sporting bunch. They want to make sure that their horrifying weapons of destruction, the super powerful ones that are sitting behind the lines that everyone's going to be hunting for, are painted in bright colors so that nobody has to spend time hunting them. There they are.
Well, it's like saying, "Hey, we're bringing freedom. Would you like some freedom?" Now, you see 10 hulls here. I can't remember the size of the missiles, but I'm pretty sure it can fire more than 10. So it could be set up like Metal Storm is, with multiple small missiles stacked.
I was about to say Metal Storm, where you have stacked missiles and you just divert the thrust around them. You have vents.
Well, you'd have like dummy heads and stuff that are dumped out the back, dumped out when the next one comes out and stuff. This one they've got the
They
weird
fixed it.
glitch. No, it's still got a glitch.
They- Oh,
The angle. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, at least it's consistent.
It looks better than the other one, But it's-
Slightly.
but it's still misaligned.
Yeah. And we talked at one point about these. I'm pretty sure to replace the missiles in here, this entire
Okay.
section is just replaced.
Yeah.
Because it would be a nightmare in the field to be slowly lowering and setting the missiles in there and then using whatever systems there to lock them into place. And if
it
you
doesn't
have
even
one,
look like they have much in the way of ammunition. Well, I mean, I think
How do you reload a Patriot? Do you move the entire canister?
Patriots, I don't know. I would presume you just take the entire. With great difficulty and great care would be the
Like
correct
one
answer.
of those that they have like a specially designed truck thingy
I believe
that
so.
reloads them off the back, like raises them and reloads them off the back.
I'm pretty sure the Patriots have the rear sections can actually open up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually is a good idea there, Marcelo. The having a support vehicle dedicated to just reloading these massive weapon systems. Because it doesn't look like they have any cranes or any sort of hardware. Like you look at a sort of similar weapon system from say I think World War II, which was believe it was the Sturm Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this big, I think it was a 380 millimeter, just rocket shell, which it's like, if for the Warhammer fans out there, the Demolisher cannon. It's exactly that. That is exactly what it was. It was just a big gun that fired a rocket-boosted shell.
You had the Trojan
As each
in
weapon, and
Warhammer, which was used an artillery carriage as a towing vehicle for the artillery, and it had the crane for loading the artillery.
That's exactly what I was going for. Is you look at the Sturm Tiger, it has a crane on the back for loading the ammunition, because those are huge rounds.
If you Google reloading a Patriot missile, it basically shows each missile is on an individual box, and there are cranes, and it basically loads them on and off. I don't know how you'd refill the boxes, but that's not an issue in the field. That's kind of we ship the boxes out and deal with them there, and then Tony Stark, we'll ship you the boxes, and yeah. Alright. But yeah, it's an interesting thing on trying to reload these. I would expect the same sort of principle, with the exception of this module here, the entire thing just being replaced. It's the fastest way I could see it being reloaded.
True.
Which means that whatever side in here is used for the magazine in this is actually not in here, and is just superfluous, I guess. And that's a 5-person crew, 5-person crew as well. So they might probably have additional space to, move around and have a, canteen or something inside.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to the railgun, which is an entirely different design. The track system here is weird.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like that is like a snowmobile, but like without skis and.
Yeah, it steers the front tracks, because good luck steering something like that with differential torque. You'd have that rear track causing all sorts of problems.
I'm pretty sure I can see in here the rotational part for the rear track.
Yeah.
True.
There's a little shadow
but that
there.
means that it's not gonna. Yeah.
Have a little azimuth that it sits on.
But you'd also have an independent control of the tracks as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That means that it can turn tight, but it doesn't mean. It doesn't move like a tank, right? It doesn't rotate.
Yeah, it can't turn in place.
I think it's probably a bit of both. But having like that turning circle in the center, like spinning within this circle here, probably doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It probably could do it, but it would just be really messy to do if this thing stopped moving entirely.
Which just like screech and scrape the ground.
But then again, in a desert environment, it's as long as you've got enough torque going.
Although the thing is, doing something like that means that you're forcing sand in between those road wheels.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
In between the tracks, a design like this, it could work, but what are the advantages of having something like this over traditional tracks?
Yeah.
And like.
I think it's less of an issue because the gun can rotate itself anyway, and it's more getting the vehicle in and out is what's going on with this. Now,
true, and you don't have to worry about driving.
I have to say that
around.
this is like my least favorite vehicle in the coalition, just because like how oddly put together it looks.
It's weird that they have the track set up like this with these things on top of them.
Yeah.
And it says, it's basically the gun and the reactor together.
Yeah.
And this is a sniper. That's its main thing.
It's like a tank destroyer, basically.
Yeah, basically, it's not a battle tank.
And it's slightly lower crew, but I would have argued it should have had a higher crew number because of the complexity of the reactor and weapon system.
Yeah, exactly. You need to split up multiple jobs.
Well, there would be a guy dedicated to the reactor control.
Exactly.
Reactor.
Yes.
And you have the gunner and driver at least.
Yeah, because it wouldn't make sense that all these other vehicles have higher.
These
crew
are 5
numbers.
crews.
Yeah.
Missile battery online.
But then again, I guess it's a smaller vehicle as well, and these are more
They have
designed
lights
for.
that you have to do on them.
Well, I think these would probably be like additional crew for long duration. And this being a smaller vehicle, it doesn't have the same you know, it's going to be out there on long patrols, theoretically. In practice, it's probably all the same, and just superfluous stuff anyway. Yeah. Right. I'm going to move swiftly on because there isn't not really that much to talk about in this one. It's got the weird dome thing going on, which I'm guessing is sensor related. Yeah, but they've done it
Really
differently in the other stuff. And these strange searchlight things going on, which are probably actually laser designators. Although,
And it has a canister facing straight forward.
Yeah, the emitter and receiver.
Yeah, it's strange setup things.
Oh, and another interesting thing that seems to appear in a lot of railguns and sci-fi that you kind of don't want to do, you really don't want to do, is the exposed rails.
Oh yeah, but that's a really cool.
The rails are just sitting out there, and also there's 3 of them instead of 2, which you
2, yeah.
Yeah, 2 is what you need to actually make it work for the.
Yeah and no. I mean, it's like tripods are the most stable sort of design for the minimum number of things. So yes, you could do it with 2, but then you also have the risk of up and down the lateral dimensions over long distance. Now, railguns, it's less of an issue anyway because of the speed you're firing something at. But I can see 3 being a logical choice, logical choice, under different conditions.
Well,
the alignment though is way more complicated than 2.
Yeah, I mean the thing is though, you have, my understanding of railguns is basic, but what you do is you have 2 rails and you send an electric current between the 2 of them, which will produce, you know, a magnetic force that shoots along the end of the rail, and if there's, you know, that electrical if that electrical signal's, you know, going through a projectile, it will bring that projectile with it.
The magnetic
with that design, you use just 2 rails going from one to the other. Having a third one, there's I don't know enough about the electromagnetic forces in a railgun to know if you could do it with 3 rails, but generally you have, you know, negative and positive.
No, because the rails themselves would be the same charge.
Yeah.
And it would be the shell or the solid thing that would be pulled along in a different way. And it's like, if you're looking at plus and minus charges, well, then they attract. So as long as all 3 of these are the same charge as whatever it is you're sending as well, I'm pretty sure that's how that works. I have to look this up. But it's the.
Well, yeah. So I just sort of Googled it just to try to get it. So yeah, railgun is 2 parallel metal rails. At one end, the rails are connected to electrical power supply. And a conductive projectile is inserted between the rails. It completes the circuit. The electron flows from the negative terminal of the power supply up the negative rail, across the projectile, and down the positive rail back to the power supply. And then they behave as electromagnet, creating a magnetic field inside the loop formed by the length of the rails to the position of the armature.
In that case, this works on the rule of cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 2 rails is how it would work. You know, because you need a negative and a positive rail.
The other thing about this
having
is
a third one would be like, what would it do?
Theoretically, it could be redundancy, and you can then switch to having that.
True, but then you would have a negative and a negative and a positive
unless
rail,
you can swap the circuitry around.
Rail. True. Still, though, it would be an unbalanced.
The alignment's just messed up anyway.
Yeah,
regardless.
you would want, if you wanted redundancy, you would have 4 rails. So you could
unless you are rapidly switching the positive and negative charges at the same time. But I'm not sure that's actually a feasible thing to make it work as a weapon.
Yeah.
It's sort of like an AC sort of current thing instead of a DC current thing going on. possibly.
Which a railgun kind of requires a DC current.
Yeah, I know. That's what some like. It's the only way I could think of possibly doing it, but it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Now-
at this point we're trying to justify the design of the gun versus...
Yeah, pretty much.
We're trying to change things to make the design work rather than make a design that works.
True.
Well, we're not the ones that designed it. We're just.
True. Yeah. We're kind of...
The thing about this as well is
justify it and...
the ammunition does not need to be big. It could just be
No, because it just needs to go
a
fast.
chunk of metal, really.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the whole sending. This has got the biggest of the turret things anyway. I can't remember a couple of sections. And the holes there, but I could see it as not being much of an issue in storing a decent amount of just literally metal balls, effectively.
But yeah, it's like with this, it's like what Marcelo said, rule of cool.
Yeah.
You know, an object's practicality is directly proportional to its coolness.
Okay, so far we'll do a
Its
quick
visibility.
summary. Base runner, LAV light vehicle, salvager and science runner. And we've done the AAV, the missile battery and a railgun. Now we're going to go into something a little bit bigger. Oh no, it's a little bit more airborne, I should say.
Strike fighter ready for service.
Now this fighter, we have disagreed with this fighter. This is not an aerodynamic front. Also,
flat nose.
No, it is
R2D2.
not. The vehicle overall looks like it has a design very reminiscent of a hypersonic craft, and then they put that nose on.
I mean, these rotate in and out, which means theoretically it could go full delta and be hypersonic, but it also factored in with
pop those out.
Yeah, for like loitering and like the closer support role that it's supposed to perform.
Yeah, but the variable geometry of it is also useful for storage and just doing all sorts of fun things.
Exactly, because it's a carrier aircraft, and it looks cool.
It's vaguely potentially vectored, but I don't really think it's really that vectored there.
No, it's just really
they have
like a square.
Just vents coming out the bottom.
And that single fin that it has, it's an antenna rather. It's not a fin, right?
Yeah, that's not it's just an antenna there.
Yeah, it's not a vertical.
It's streamlined probably for purposes of being structurally solid for communications. And it has canards anyway.
And it doesn't have a landing gear. That's the thing that we were talking about before.
No visible landing gear.
Well, there's a lifter vent right there underneath.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, this could be stored on a magnetic sled.
Yeah.
Good, but it helps.
But I mean, it's weird because all of the other craft have landing gears, but this one.
Yeah, but when we looked at the carrier in game, they were on full sleds moving back and forth. So
True.
These
I remember
could be on
that.
sleds. That's
Also,
what
an interesting thing of note is look at how those folding wings are attached to the aircraft itself.
Oh yeah,
They literally just have a little knob that they rotate on that just sticks down. They're not blended with the structure of the aircraft, which if you look at real variable geometry wings, like say an F-14 or a B-1, those wings are integrated and blended with the aircraft. The mechanical implements that rotate move
This
those
is why
wings
I'm not sure it's actually
are
hypersonic.
inside the aircraft, because something like that not only would cause all sorts of aerodynamic problems, drag, and just all those cut shapes that are intersecting with each other at weird angles would cause all sorts of weird aerodynamic problems, but that's also something that can get shot off.
If you look at
True.
control
Wrenched around by
surfaces,
G-surfaces.
you can't see that
Or
many
G-forces.
clear control surfaces on it. And if
It
you were
has
to,
one big one in the middle.
yeah,
Look
but
at
that's
that
not
one.
very
It's like a big-
much.
That doesn't look like... It might not be... I see the hinges.
Yeah, it's not that much to be
Like,
honest.
usually you want your ailerons on the ends of the wings. You
Yeah,
have the
exactly,
most-
not in the
the
middle.
most leverage.
And if you
for
were to
rolling.
fold these in, there's no leading edge. And that's an interesting thing. And obviously,
So-
clearly these don't store fuel, so that's a different factor in this.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm thinking the rotational part is more for storage than, and maybe like.
But check it out.
landing.
It says what we were talking about. It's a swing wing design that allows the
Yeah.
aircraft to spring to its target, then extend its wing for tight maneuvers and carrier landings.
Yeah.
So I mean, they get the idea right, but maybe the execution is not that.
Unless
aerodynamic.
it's-
They even kind of named it after the Tomcat, with it being an SJ F-14.
Yeah.
I think it's more that they're independent for fly-by-wire, and that's how they do leading edge.
They do. They do. I
alteration.
remember that we saw that in the when we were having our a comp stomp play session. They
Yeah.
do move independently.
Yeah, because that would make more sense then. Because if we think about these designs in a more fly-by-wire sense, even the snub nose, because that reduces aerodynamic effect, then that gives it a different aspect to it. I mean, this is all power plant.
Yeah.
There's limited ammunition for the weapon systems here,
It's
which
basically just on the nose, and it has like 4 bombs and then like those missile tubes things.
even the weapon system placement here is really dodgy. Because if those don't
Yeah.
deploy properly,
They hit whereas you look at modern craft, if the missile doesn't deploy properly, it just falls.
yeah.
Mhm.
Although
Here
even then, you can,
doesn't
you
fall
can see
much.
multiple. Even then, if you see, like, you can watch multiple videos of, like, say, Vietnam era aircraft or test aircraft in the 50s firing these missiles for the first time. They'll drop off, the wind will hit them, and they'll smack right back into the bottom of the aircraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when these missiles have ample room and are in a nice place where there's nothing behind them but air.
Yeah, it's an interesting setup. And if you try and figure out where this goes, it gets really like
And again,
intakes and
okay.
exhausts and stuff.
like I had said before, there's no, or like we've all said before, there's no real vertical stabilizer. So I wonder where this thing gets its yaw control,
Yeah.
because it could be like the B2 with spoilers, but I don't see any areas with spoilers.
That's
Theoretically, you could get a little bit from the canards, but
from
not
those canards.
Yes,
really.
but their angle is very shallow,
Yeah, there's limited rotation on that.
and
I don't
that's you're doing that from the front, which generally you want to have your yaw control behind your center of gravity.
Yeah, it is also interesting that the cockpit is off center when you're thinking
Yeah.
about that.
I want to say something about that.
Yeah.
It's I think they did that to link it with the previous
Homeworld games.
with the Homeworld space game. With the space fighter, it had a line in which it had
You're roboting
this
slightly.
gigantic cannon in the center. Yeah, like it was not for the inertia that is going to impart when it's firing, and it was such a compact design that they put to one side and then the sensors packaged to the other side and the gun in the middle. That, I mean, it looked cool, it's symmetrical, but it made sense in a way. Now in a craft that is designed to operate in an atmosphere, maybe it doesn't make much sense, especially because the cockpit is square block.
Yeah. For me though, looking at it, if I'm aligning the bombs, I probably wouldn't use the cockpit sensors like eyes to do it. I would probably use whatever sensor system they've got set up, because I'm not aligned directly with where my bombs are going to be dropping and such.
Yeah.
But then if we're thinking about it in a fly-by-wire sense, that's what's happening. This is probably more for the pilot to see, and it's a
Yeah.
two-person craft as well.
Uh-huh.
So somebody
guess
there
the-
doesn't really have very much view.
I think the navigator is like behind in the rest of the gray area part, and it's just like sensors or navigating radar operator, whatever.
Well,
it
I
is.
would probably expect it to be the pilot up front, because when docking and stuff, the actual cockpit visibility makes sense, and weapon systems, communication, everything else is
Yeah,
all
the guy in the
by
back.
weapons operator. Although I say that's different though with many combat aircraft. They put the gunner up front and the pilot behind.
In the helicopters. but that makes sense because it's a tandem cockpit, and then I guess the pilot that is behind has like a better look downwards and forwards.
Yes. But yeah, it's an interesting thing with this. If we move to the bomber next, are you good to move?
Yes, I think I don't know. Dorn. Okay, there it is.
Okay, so we've done
Yeah,
about
sorry.
an hour.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that had a bit of a problem there.
Alright, I'm gonna move over to the bomber.
Bomber ready for
It's
sourcing.
a three-person craft, and you can see the three
Oh,
separate
the three.
cockpits.
Mhm.
Um,
This one has a beautiful design of the airframe.
the nose is a little bit funky,
Yeah,
but
it's
Yeah,
I'm not
better than
holding
the-
it against it because it has to have so many sensors and things going on in
Yeah.
it.
Still, they're all right there in this big cluster that looks like it would create a lot of drag.
Yes, but then again, it's got a lot of engine and multiple types of engine too.
True, but you know, the less drag,
It's a
the
beat also.
less work your engines have to do, less fuel you burn, and also when you have a draggier nose out on the front, you're going to create a really big bow wave.
This
which
is
will lead
it's
to
just
some-
such a nice
That will
craft.
lead to some stability problems. But yeah, this
Yeah.
thing. I
This
love
is
the look.
definitely the rule of cool, and you also we haven't got it here, but there is the giant carrier aircraft that appears in the story and in some of the
Ah, yeah.
cutscenes, and this just makes me think of that and just like the huge design of them, and it's just so nice.
The one that can carry base runners and some of the larger vehicles. It's
Oh yeah,
It's like one of those flying fortresses from Ace Combat or something like that.
yeah. And again, they keep the canard design here, which is nice. And the
I mean, this is
exhaust.
overall like softer curves
Oh yeah.
than the fighter,
Yes.
but still.
it's a
Strike fighter
between-
ready for service.
And they're relatively soft curves until you hit the wings.
But I mean, this is blockier. Like the back
Bomber
is like
ready for
squarish, and then this like it's like a bit more curvy and slanted. Like
Slightly, but it's also got the scale to do that. If you
Yeah,
consider the amount of surface.
exactly. And this is a lifting body one.
Yes. Yes, it is. Lifting body. Control, leading edge. I mean,
Oh, and look, it has the vents for the. For
yeah,
the
this
eagles.
one's slightly more visible on these. Especially when I go to this angle, I can see them better than if I'm on this angle.
Yeah.
I discovered that when we were looking at this the other day. But it's somewhat lifting body because you know how lifting systems work, and yeah.
I mean, you look at all these; they definitely have some lifting body mechanics in them because those are some stubby wings.
Yeah.
Because it's also, well, the way lift works is
And the
it's,
bodies are
is
nice.
air likes to be together, and so high lift stuff takes the air on the top go further to get to the bottom and be
and
happy.
it gets compressed against the air,
Yes.
the still air around it. So you're creating a venturi,
Yeah.
which speeds up. So the air is compressing against the curved surface of the plane, the airfoil, and the still air on top of the plane as it's passing by, and you just get a venturi. You get low pressure, and well, you guys know how lift works.
Yeah. It's one of these things as well that some of the high lift aircraft will have variable geometry on the wings. Not the wings itself, but on the control surfaces to create higher lift where necessary.
Exactly. Yeah.
This though does not have that effect on it. It's a
I was gonna
pretty
say this.
straight thing, so I guess there is some lifting element to it, but not very much. It's more about the cutting through the air is what it looks like to me. And
Yeah.
plus being VTOL, that plays a big role in it.
One interesting thing that I think I don't see a lot in fictional aircraft, is well, probably because it's a bit subtle, is the use of leading edge flaps, which,
Yeah.
in conjunction with traditional flaps, can change an aircraft's wing surface to become a very high lift body.
Yes.
Like this is actually the type of thing that did away with the variable geometry wing, because you didn't have to have a complicated heavy mechanism to move an entire wing.
Which
You
in
could
itself
simply
has
just have-
fuel and everything else in it, and is needing a
Yeah.
lot of torque and
instead you just
deal
have
with high speed.
exactly. Instead you just have a flap, just like what you would have on the back of the wing, that would adjust its angle based on the aircraft's, what the aircraft speed was, and channel more air over the wing, or channel air over the wing at, say, a high angle of attack, or just modify the wing shape to have a much higher camber, so that it would produce more lift at low speed. And then when you start to speed up, that leading edge flap would straighten out, and now you have your low lift, low drag, high speed wing back. And if you look at a modern aircraft, like say a modern fighter aircraft, like say an F-16 or a F-22, you'll see they have these leading edge flaps where the entire front end of the wing can just bend down and turn it into a high lift body.
Yeah. I was looking at the scale of this and just thinking, that's a lot of plane.
Yeah.
It's a lot of mass as well. It's 45 meters, but I'm guessing that's the length. But it's probably about the same in width as well.
I think they give the longest side.
Well, I thought they were all because they only give one measurement, so I thought it's all the longest, the front to tail thing.
Yeah.
And this uses a rotating thing for the wing, which I believe also is hinged. I think we looked at this at one point.
Which is
game.
a bit odd that they would do that.
It's odd, but it's an interesting, novel approach to it. It's not a particularly efficient one, and from what I can tell.
But it looks cool.
Yeah.
It looks cool. Which, by the way, did you guys go over the intakes while my Discord was being strange for the, well, not so much, I mean, these look alright. They are a bit small, which generally an air-breathing engine, you want a lot of air going in, because
But we're not assuming we are assuming air-breathing engines.
I mean, that's why you would have an intake on an aircraft.
But this has two
maybe
types.
these are.
The central one here, and then these other weird. I can't really get a good angle on this.
But the ones that are air-breathing are going to need some air.
Yes.
And they're going to need more air the faster you go, because they're going to need to produce more power the faster you go, or more thrust.
To an extent, yes, depending on fuel usage as well, depending on the stoichiometry, the fuel-to-air ratios and such. And also if they're putting an afterburner effective stuff in. Because there's a lot of this, considering there's no specific wing, I doubt very much that's the only fuel source, so there's probably...
Yeah, it's probably essential. There's definitely central tanks. Which makes me think, this thing having two engine types, it looks like air-breathing engines and also...
hypersonic or...
some sort of, like, rocket engines, perhaps. Would this thing be like an SSTO of any sort? Because it almost is trying to be one.
No, because during that period they didn't use... there was very limited space activity.
Yeah, they were just like barely...
They had probes and such going up, but not mad stuff.
Yeah, maybe not SSTO, but more like a hypersonic...
like a suborbital.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word I was thinking, suborbital.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah, because it is kind of like the size of a strategic bomber. Like maybe not as big as strategic bombers from the Cold War, but it's like closer to that than that of a tactical bomber.
And it is which would make sense if this is a strategic bomber, and looking at the way their civilization is, where people mostly just live at the poles. Which means you've got at least 3/4 of a planet to fly over before you hit anything. And doing that in a big, slow bomber is not going to go well, so you want to go fast and high so you can get to your target.
I agree and disagree. Because of the short wings on this, I doubt it will be a strategic bomber. And I reckon it's more fuel and more bomb bay in here if you look at the damage ratios and stuff.
Oh, no, I was thinking about not so much like strategic bomber as in crawling its way to an objective. Yeah, exactly. Like what Marcelo said, suborbital. It pushes itself beyond the atmosphere, but not quite into orbit.
I'm
using those non-air breathing engines.
I mean, it could
And
also be that
It
during
does
dust
that to gain more
storms,
distance.
it could be because it could be doing that to avoid the dust storms by getting above them. But then
Exactly.
again,
You
it could be
can avoid the dust storms and also get some good range by just pushing yourself into the upper thin limits of the atmosphere and just coasting through that.
if you had
with
the thrust to do
minimal
that,
engine power.
that would work, and you'd probably dump your payload to do that if you hit it. But then again, it could
Exactly.
also be that some of these engine things are designed to work in the dust storm, and that low intake there means
So
that
it shuts off the intake if it hits a dust storm and it uses the non-air breathing ones.
it could even
Yeah,
use an internal oxygen source.
Also, yeah.
Well, yeah. Definitely. I mean, that's.
I mean, with that size of craft,
non-air
you
breathing in.
definitely have the possibility.
And if you are going to be doing hypersonic stuff, you probably want that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, because
Some hyperbolic fuel of some sort. That's my expectation of what it would be doing with that.
Because with the like bigger air intakes, they create more resistance, right? More drag.
Exactly.
Well, it's compressing the air, and if you cannot then move it forward, yes, you are getting drag.
Yeah.
Or you're just sending the air back out the back unburnt kind of thing, which is kind of pointless.
Yeah.
And ideally you want a variable intake system, so you can get more air as you need it.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking too.
And the
is
fin doesn't look like it
have
opens,
intakes
right?
that will open a little further or close a little further depending on your speed, or like with the SR-71 or with the MiG-21 with the shock cone that
Yes.
just move back and forth depending on the speed of the aircraft
Yeah.
to move that shock wave around in the intake to make sure it was always getting the optimal amount of airflow.
Okay, let's move to the next one because we've been on for slightly longer than I thought it would be to get through this
Yeah.
much. Alright,
Gunship.
let's
I
go.
mean, you can tell that we like
Now in
aircraft.
circulation.
Now this is an interesting one because
Yeah.
I have issues with this design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
This gun is touching the floor.
yeah, that's a bit of an issue.
Get the
Gotta make
landing
an
gear.
emergency
So
landing.
it may be like 1 centimeter, like the flight deck, but it's just.
Oh
But
yeah,
even
I've left
so,
some
you
chewing
don't
gum on
want
the floor. And
munition
Oh yeah, yeah.
or weaponry hanging that low, something that has explodey things going through it, you don't want to drag on the ground.
Yeah. And look, the weird thing is that this one has a center cockpit and it has the sensor dome thingy where it should be.
and air intake on above.
You know. Yeah, exactly.
It's a three-person
Although
thing, but
technically
only
you
one's
don't
going to be in
necessarily need the sensor dome to be
there. Oh no, you
central.
don't. No.
Like with an F-16, it's mounted down on the side of the intake, or right behind the air inlet, on the side of the fuselage.
I mean, this-
the bottom side of the fuselage.
If I remember right, this is designed with this primary cannon. Well, that's not even the primary cannon, that's one of the cannons, and there's a secondary cannon here, and they're both on the turret thing to fire in this general direction towards where the camera is. But this sensor dome, or sensor collection, is facing forwards, as is this dome. But then that could be more
Look at those
camera than
tiny canards.
And with an aircraft like that, you would want the dome less right in the middle and more down on the bottom, so you can
Oh,
push
yes.
down on targets.
The belly.
And then when you see this thing flying, it acts like an AC-130, where it circles and fires to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which begs the question: why not integrate these
Having
guns into the side of the fuselage like an AC-130? You can.
Yeah.
By doing that, you don't have the drag of having these massive guns hanging out, especially with one on the side and nothing on the other side, which means you've got asymmetric drag. So the plane's always desperately trying to yaw to one direction.
Although we do
yaw
have the
to the
fly-by-wire argument of that. And these
True.
independent rotating and flexing things there. And again, the two-engine design.
Even with fly-by-wire, you don't want to tax your aircraft any
Oh,
more
no.
than it has to be.
Not if you can avoid it. It's got
It's like-
weird shock bit here as well. Like, that's weird.
Is that like a ram air intake?
I don't think it's an intake. It's just.
It looks almost like, if I look closely, it almost looks like it's got
It's got notches in it.
notches in it. Like there's the little support struts, the
Yeah.
veins.
It's
So
like
it
it's
might be
been stamped
ram air
from metal
intake.
kind of thing, but it's. Yeah. Maybe, but I don't think it is. It's just an odd
Yeah, because
design
it's more like-
affectation.
That's just a nice
You know what it
way.
looks like? it looks
drag
like
magnet.
you got a slice from a bulkhead.
Yeah, that's what I
And
mean.
then
It's a
you-
stamped metal thing.
Yeah.
It looks like somebody just glued the nose on that was slightly too small.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Which, looking at that, that's just a lot of drag right there.
And this has got the fuel in the wings. It's clearly
In the wings,
the
yeah.
storage for that.
Just fat wings, yeah.
Because this is an AC, so I'm guessing it has some central cargo space. And
We're onto ammo storage. I don't know about how you get ammo to this
Actually,
thing.
the designation is SJG-12, which I guess would be Sajet gunship.
12,
Yes,
model 12.
The AC
Yes.
looks like it would be their tail number.
because you have
Strike fighter ready
the
for service.
Sajet
Yeah.
fighter,
Bomber ready for
Bomber,
sortie.
Sajet
gunship.
armor and
circulation.
Sajet gunship.
and AC-510 on it, obviously.
Yeah, I always assumed that was like its tail number.
Yeah, it's not the actual code number for it. You almost never have that on those things, unless it's a prototype vehicle, and even then it's probably
Yeah.
X on it.
And
Um,
also one other thing is that if you look at those cargo thingies from
Cargo?
the turrets, rotate around, they have like doors.
No, they don't. That's the landing gear.
Those landing
This
gear
landing
doors.
gear DLs
Oh,
for
that's a
those.
landing gear door. That's wow.
Yeah,
So the turret's
it's
just
dodgy.
there.
Which I think I might have brought up that it's weird that they don't have those landing gear doors scissor. They have those.
Yeah, it should scissor up, because otherwise
yeah, 'cause
that's
if you have
lateral
it-
forces in it.
Yeah, that could bend and break your doors as well.
I mean, it
as
should scissor up and
maneuvers.
be parallel to the hull when it's fully out,
Mhm.
as well as, in.
Exactly, because that's just gonna wreak havoc on your aerodynamics. Well, not
And there's
quite
also-
havoc, but it's gonna cause some problems.
I like
Huh.
that they changed the design thing on this top part of the engine. I wish they did it on
Yeah.
the bottom part as well. Because this is a nice change of slopes and stuff, and it looks good. It kind of almost, if it was on the bottom and top, it would make me think that this engine section is actually removable, and then for maintenance they can just pull it out, deal with that part, and then put it back in. Over
True,
here
but,
it's kind of in a
mean,
sled, so it kind of could work, but
that would still cause problems with drag, and I mean, you
oh
look at
yeah.
real life
look at the
aircraft, that
center
is exactly
fuselage.
what they have, and they don't have their engines sticking out like that. They just, you undo the fasteners that hold them in, and the engine just slides out on a track.
Yeah, you either have them on the wings or under the wings where you can do that, or they're integrated in which case you're taking the aircraft out entirely to be dealt with. But these, and you've got the additional engines in here, whatever they're doing. And if we are thinking of these as the sort of engines that can take it above the dust cloud, then it would be a similar principle here, where they've probably got an oxygen fuel source somewhere in there.
You've got the intakes for the air breathers, and then when you want to switch to your lower efficiency but non-air breathing.
I mean, that
engine
actually could
for-
be the thing they do, is that they store compressed oxygen inside, and this is just to refill the compressors.
True, yeah, that these engines are very efficient and they can sip fuel and oxidizer, and that these vents, that's the reason why they're so small, is that they're just storing.
And
Oxidized.
also they could be filtering the dust from the air before it gets into the thing.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the
That
dust
makes
hitting the
sense for
engine,
the kind of like technological level that they have and the way the planet is.
yeah. I mean, you'd have to have somewhere to, I guess, effectively poop out the dust, but that's the thing. Maybe use it as maybe they intake the dust and then they shoot it out the barrels.
Like some
That's why they
blasting.
never run out of ammo.
Well, that's how Star Trek works with their deflector dishes. They take in the hydrogen and stuff and use it for stuff.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I was gonna say is that in game they fire as if they were like an autocannon, or like a Gatling even.
Yes.
But there seems to be like single barrel,
What? Yeah.
unless they're.
That's
I
a
don't know.
pretty big. That's a big auto cannon. It's like a naval gun,
Yeah.
firing at like 1,000 rounds a minute.
And you look at the person comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And with those guns slung so low below the aircraft center of gravity, that I'm surprised the thing doesn't just start rolling crazily when it fires.
True.
So it's an interesting
wonder-
design. I like the aircraft design. I don't like the payload design.
Yeah. It's like they
gear.
designed the aircraft and then they were like, oh wow, damn it, where do I put these guns? I'm just gonna pop them here.
Yeah, they could have at least been in some sort of streamlined turrets on the side of it if you wanted to make it look cool.
I mean, the turret design, either the turret needs to be underneath, in which case the landing gear is going to be a dodgy thing to do anyway, or you pop the turret on top, which then removes the streamlined aspect of it and changes the sort of family
design. So you can see
design
why the
thing.
person did that, but still, it would have made sense. And also make the guns a bit smaller, because they don't need to be that big.
They don't even, and the thing is as well, you've got a fighter and a bomber. Do you need a gunship?
Well, they're pretty useful in the game.
I mean, if I'm going to do a quick switch to Coalition. Oh wait, we're on Coalition. Gaalsien. They don't run gunships.
They don't.
Interceptors and bombers. And I kind of do wonder if the gunship was really necessary, or was just kind of it's a game, let's get a gunship in because other games have got gunships.
I like using it, and like Daron said, it is useful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it can loiter around, whereas the bomber, it launches and then it has to go home.
But then that's the mechanics of the game design aspect, and not so much to the actual crafting of the thing to look good.
Yeah, you would.
And gunships were in the other Homeworld games, so I can see why they put it in there. It just, the actual design and the model and stuff doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It's still a very, very nice design. It
is.
Until you get to the mechanics of how does it actually work. Alright, let's move on to the big fun stuff.
Support cruiser now operational.
Now, while I like this one, I actually want to start on the battle cruiser because it's a solid hull, and it makes more sense to start here. Because to me, this track design, there's a big gap between them. But then again, if you look at something like the shuttle crawler and stuff,
the crawler transporter.
Yeah, which is basically what these things look like. The thing is, though, the shuttle crawler is driving on a level pavement road.
It is.
This thing has to crest dunes and then have
or
dunes
cut through them.
underneath.
But they do have like the transmission thing. Those independent tracks, they are mounted on those
hinged.
Yeah, those hinge. They can elevate.
Not much, but they can a bit. I mean, if you look at this kind of gets a bit dodgy there. But
I mean, it's because they're at the minimum there.
No, I mean this part here, the way the metal here pretty much matches that. If you're hinging this upwards, you're not gonna clear.
No, what I mean is that they hinge downwards. That's the minimum that they can take. That's it.
Yeah, this thing is just sitting at idle, so it relaxes its suspension, so it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
It's
Well,
not
oh yeah, if you look at the scissors element there.
Yeah, they fully extend. I mean, if they would extend to the maximum, they could even go like almost like a quadruple thing.
They could probably be quite the floor
like
part here is probably up here if it was a
NASA rovers where they can lift. But yeah, Marcelo, what you were saying with the whole quadrupedal, like those NASA rovers that can lift one wheel and put it on top of something and do a pull-up.
Kind of, yeah.
It's like, take the advantages of a walker and the advantages of a wheeled vehicle and put them in one. Where, you don't have the instability and the maintenance-intensive, easy-to-break walker, and you also have the nice and stable wheels.
Yeah. Well, with this as well, when you see the bridge section here, there's probably, I'm not sure what that particular thing is, but then you've got these big armoured plates up front, which I guess are kind of useful, although they're also kind of weird.
It's they said in the lore there that they had like these forward artillery mounts, maybe like the Churchill or like one of those French early World War II tanks that they had the mortar.
Yeah.
And that it was too heavy and they had to remove it. So I guess that's what it was.
It's like you just stuck on some armor to cover a hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
If we switch briefly to the artillery cruiser,
The reactive armor.
it doesn't have
There's
it.
no holes there. But...
Battle cruiser operational.
I think it's probably more ablative than reactive.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks with the hinges and stuff that it could even be replaceable. Just deflecting and ablating it, although
it's the same armor plate that it has in the front of the tracks.
Yeah.
To have expendable armor like that would be kind
You've
of
got
a
it
problem on
same
something
thing
this
on
big. Because like with a regular tank, it's all right. Yeah, you know, something hit our reactive armor. Okay, cool. Get out, unbolt it, bolt on a new one. You know what? Two or three people. Yeah, we're done. With this, you need a full crane and
Yeah.
The thing with
all
reactive
sorts of
armor is though, you'd have much smaller plates that you can do. You wouldn't have such big plates.
True. But yeah, with reactive armor with something like that, yeah, exactly. You don't want to have big plates. I mean,
In
then
case,
you're
okay, let's step back a bit.
I think
What is reactive armor?
an explosive.
explosives.
So
which
when the
an
shell comes
explosive
in, it
that
detects
size-
it, and then it sends a chunk of the armor towards the explosive, towards the incoming shot to detonate it before it hits the vehicle.
and that is a big chunk.
Yes, so either it's dealing with missiles or something coming in, which even then the speed is kind of silly, or it's probably, I think, just ablative, if even ablative, because if you look at the rest of the craft, it's not.
I honestly think that is.
They're probably just doors.
It's just it covers the whole, like you said before. Like they had those artillery, like mortars there, and then it was
Well,
too
what's
heavy.
the
And
grey thing?
go to the artillery cruiser and see what it has there.
Artillery
They're
cruiser
probably
Nothing.
just doors.
Yeah, so basically the central section gets modified a little.
The whole
Cruiser
central thing is just
operational.
hidden.
Artillery cruiser
Yeah, it looks like they
operational.
just
Artillery
glued
cruiser
some
operational.
or welded some hinges on top and dropped some armor down over the
Because these
normal
three
front end.
cruisers, they share a common hull.
Support cruiser now
Even that
operational.
one.
Cruiser
These two are
operational.
more or less the
Cruiser
same
now
in the front.
operational.
And you look at
Slight
the
variant.
there's more of the
Artillery
unarmored
battle
bull
cruiser
bar
operational.
version than there are this armored battle cruiser version. So I think they just built these cruisers and thought, hey, you know what? We should make one with big guns, but we're not going to design a whole new cruiser, so we'll just put some armor haphazardly on it and call it a day.
And we have the sensor things on both sides here, which makes a little bit more sense of actually the fly-by-wire and the AI control for stuff.
But
I
they should
always
have
thought
been
those
they should have been a
Seaways.
phalanx scan. They should have been Seaways, yeah, exactly. Like
Well,
the
I
other ones,
believe
I think
they
they,
are in
for example,
on the
yeah.
here.
Maybe
in
it
that
was,
one.
maybe
I mean,
it is
that's
a
Seaways.
Seaways, but they forgot to
Battle
model
cruiser
it.
operational.
I think they did it out of game balance because they wanted to give it some
Yeah.
some weakness against the
Artillery
smaller
cruiser
craft, so they
operational.
removed it.
Because the artillery one does have the Seaways in the upgrade thing,
Battle
I
cruiser
believe.
operational.
Yeah.
Now with this, we talked about the bridge and the turrets at one point. Because the rotation on that upper turret isn't necessarily going to clear this.
You'll shoot your antenna off.
Yeah, and it also if it cannot depress.
Yes.
So if you go into a hold down position with this vehicle, only the front turret's gonna be able to do that.
Yes and no, because if we have
Even
these scissors extensions, you can raise the entire hull part.
You're right. You're right.
Still, you're putting a significant portion of the hull above
Up.
the
Effectively
whatever
presenting.
cover
Which
you're
kind of
presenting
like
your-
fits the hold down thing.
yeah.
But
It's
the
like,
way I see it, this is more like a battleship thing, so it's gonna arc the guns. It's not like a direct fire. The line of sight is more
When
like...
you have the range, you will arc. When you don't have the range, you obviously can't.
Yeah.
And this
also
is
that turret looks like it's about to shoot its
the
front
little
turret
domey
off.
bit there. And this is it's just front. That's the thing. It's highly durable, so they just run in and anchor the battle line, as it says here. So it's an interesting one with that, in that it's meant to be survivable, but I'm not convinced certain aspects of it
Yeah.
are protected enough to do that.
Yeah, the front cockpits that look like crane cockpits, they should definitely be like bunkers, like the with the slits rather than
If
integrated
even
to the glass
visible.
Nice
or from
big
glassy.
plate glass windows
Yeah, I would have put
for
it
bullets to go through.
center and then buried inside
Yeah.
there if I was doing it.
Mhm.
And then why
Or
is this
maybe
bridge section here
there's
as well?
Maybe there is a command bridge or a con where
Yeah,
they
you could have
normally
like a
drive it.
CAC.
Those are
Yeah.
all just navigation bridges and spot things.
Or a battle bridge
But if you
hidden
look at, for
inside it.
example, like modern vehicles, because this is closer than a tank than it is to a ship, right? It's like an
Yes.
in-between. So and I have to say that these are the
cruiser.
yeah, exactly. These are like their versions of ships because if you look at there's a like you were saying before, there's civilian versions of these things, and the one that is like their equivalent of the container carrier is actually almost not a one-to-one scale, but an upscale version of the NASA crawler transporter, and it has like this flat top deck and it has containers on top of it. So this is a vehicle that is grounded in reality to a larger
To
extent.
an extent.
Yeah.
Though I'm still kind of trying to get over how they're operating these vehicles in an environment with very loose ground, and you have a vehicle that's many thousands of tons.
True.
These as well, it's
doesn't
partly the
dig its
fly-by-wire
own
aspect,
grave.
I think, comes across in older vehicles, but I'm also thinking that these are probably designs based upon the civilian things as well.
Yeah.
And so that aspect comes back again with what we just said with the container thing, that some of the design ethos is probably restricted in that way, and that
yeah, where these are, I mean, a lot of these things, the whole theme that you get from all these vehicles is that they're construction machines.
The other thing is it's a coalition.
Somebody strapped guns to.
And the coalition has to then bend to whatever they're working with in the other groups, whereas the Gaalsien versions are quite different. I am thinking we will do the Gaalsien another day, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is taking a while.
Let's finish the coalition today, and the next stream, next week, we'll do the Gaalsien.
Okay, and if we go to the... now, I want to compare this one to the artillery one, because they're very similar hull designs. There's slight differences at the front and the edges and stuff, but they're overall the same hull. Except this one uses multiple missile batteries on it, and it's got a weird scissors thing going on there.
Yeah, like an articulated thingy that...
I don't really understand what's going on with it, to be honest.
It should have been a silo, like a VLS system there.
Yes, I would have preferred that to make more sense of it.
They seem like they
can't angle this
can
very well.
recede into the hole, like they go down because they're mounted in a particular plate.
The square plates possibly, but then you also have a round plate in the middle to rotate.
Yeah.
I mean, the scissors thing makes me think that some aspect of it is just the thrust from the missiles to be protecting the lower section. But then the front missiles and the back missiles, how is it sending the heats anywhere else and the exhaust anywhere else? So I don't really know. Then the other thought I had was maybe the entire system has a really, really convoluted system of protecting those missile launchers during the dust storm.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced that the entire thing recedes in, because I don't remember seeing that happen in game.
No, it doesn't.
But I want to just say it's a very similar hull, and they've gone for a different weapon system on this, which isn't... I like that. I don't know how you reload them. I don't know how you do a bunch of things with this, but interesting. And these bits at the back here, I can't remember if they are specifically active systems, because I believe it has... does it say it on this? About the flak ability, because it's got the CWIS on the front. No, parallels have logic and the strength of long range.
So check out what it says. It says that it's an old design, and this is basically kind of like roughly the same hull that the others share. So like you were saying, it's like this design that they're trying to like extend their life and like adding things, and sometimes they fail. And
I mean, even and this is not a very good example of that, but if you look at the paint and the design of the colours, it all looks a little faded, a little worn.
Yeah.
I mean, they use some incredible paint considering that it's a dust environment all the time.
True.
It's got to be some of that crazy self-healing paint.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool.
I forgot what it was actually called, but have you heard of that?
Yes, I have heard of that stuff. It's
where they have the little liquid gel beads inside the paint that cover scratches.
There's one particular type of, I remember, but it has to be done particularly thickly, because it almost has like paint, almost tiny canisters inside it, or little like water balloon kind of things. But when it's broken, these other things, they spread out, and because of the surface tension, they just fill the gaps, and then kind of what's it called, dry quickly on them. And that's a similar sort of thing that they've got in some of the rubber tires, that they have like almost bubbles of rubber that just expand when bits break and stuff.
Color, can you go quickly like between the artillery and the battle cruiser? I want to check at the look at the tracks.
Yeah,
See, they're basically
twin
just bolted
tracks.
armor on.
Yeah.
And it's like the engine section, like the aft section, it changes a little.
Yes.
Maybe it's
here.
more protected.
Sorry, this actually gets kind of annoying. You can't hear the audio when I do this.
Oh.
But it says the name every time you do it. Yeah, this changes slightly. There's slightly bigger part in the battle cruiser and sticks out more. But this has got more of a lip on it. Yeah, I think we've mostly covered it. It's got the same grille section here, which I'm pretty sure these grills on the larger vehicles in particular are for when you're going in and out of the carrier.
Yeah.
And if it's damaged or something, and they've got these big bay doors at the back, which I'm not entirely sure what they're for, but yeah.
Maybe in the original design of shipbreakers, these could carry smaller vehicles like the base runner did.
It would make sense if this is the hull for a civilian craft and this was the ability there, but then how do you get the vehicles on and up and down and stuff? Or
that's a good point. Maybe it has a, I don't know, like a ramp that extends, like
well,
it opens the doors and then
how do you even get people in there, to be honest? Probably ladders and things. But I would suspect that these are actually, because the cruiser class isn't independent, fully functioning thing that could go off on long patrol. This is just when it docks, it has the large access thing for putting in all the equipment and food and everything else.
Yeah. And if you
potentially
look at it,
even
like,
replacement of power plant and other things through an engineering core that goes through the center.
Yeah, that's, now that you mention power plant, if you look at the back side, and if the central area is cargo, and you look at those like exhaust, like the so it basically has like twin engines, like one on each side. And the support cruiser, now when you show it, you're gonna realize that it has those two extended outwards.
Single exhaust.
You see? Yeah, exactly. So basically they hollow it out instead of like a hangar. They just have a well, like a well deck, like a dry dock for smaller
pretty
vehicles.
much what it is. It says now, I'm going to go back and forth between these and just to show you the clear differences here. The entire hollow section there, the bridge has been moved, the vehicle, the front thing is still the same.
The tracks are more splayed out.
Yes, the back in particular, but that's because it's got the bay area here. And as you said, there's a scissors part to raise and lower.
It's easier to see it there, yeah.
And then you've got these repair domes. Yeah. And then the crane for crane things, I guess. And the inner beams as well for repair stuff and construction. And I believe this one is anti-air as well.
Yeah, this one has a missile battery there.
Flax,
and it has the seaweeds.
Yeah.
And it has that interesting Jurassic dome there. That I don't know if that's like a garden or whatever.
Unlikely. Probably Comcom. Element.
Yeah.
Or crazy
Or
cooling for the AI that controls all of the building aspects and
That
stuff.
could be.
I don't know. It's speculation entirely.
Although why would you have that so close to the outside of the vehicle?
What I forgot to do is battle cruiser, 35 people. Now, that seems like a small amount in that amount of space, but then again, if you think about the amount of duration they'd be in there for, 25 for artillery, which I guess sort of makes sense.
Shouldn't it be the opposite?
I would have thought the other way around as well.
Because you need more people operating the sensors and plotting the coordinates.
And also depends upon reloading missiles and how that whole system works, and if it's like more a bigger magazine in there. But then battle cruiser, also again how the magazine setup is designed for that. If we go to these, we're down to 20.
20. Well, I guess if that has like an automated factory, maybe that could make sense, and especially if you remove all the cargo space that it had and you make it into a dry dock, so less
Well, you
space for
don't.
people.
If you assume that this is in these other ones, if it is additional sorry, entirely magazine, and then
True.
additional engine things, because these are only 2 exhausts instead of 4.
That is true. They should have like a similar crew size.
I would have
all
expected that. And then this also has this hollow section that goes all the way here underneath this part.
Yeah.
So the entire crew compartment's got to be here, all these 2 side bits. And I would expect that there'd probably be 1 or 2 crew in each of these side pods here, unless this is fully automated, which I don't think they would do if they've got the main engines there.
And also, I'm kind of puzzled as to why they don't have some sort of supports going across, at least over the top of it, because that's structurally that looks pretty wonky.
Yes and no, but then we don't know whether they use like adamantium or unobtainium or whatever in there.
Yeah, I think they have, since they scavenge
hand-wavium on a titanium hybrid.
I think
MacGuffin
they
of
do,
some sort.
because they build their craft based off their ancient, you know, spaceship that they find crashed all around. So, and you find that weird like blue looking thing, and you know, if it's blue, it's super advanced and magic. So.
Yep.
Right.
And if it's hexagonal and blue, then wow.
Then it can bend reality.
Yeah.
Right. We're nearing 2 hours soon, so let's head to the carrier and talk about that.
Yes.
And then we'll be just over 2 when we finish, hopefully. It runs on more than 4 tracks. There's the 2 up front that are very easy to see, the 2 at the back that are easy to see, and then there's these insert ones here, and what looks like potentially more here. It's kind of difficult to see this. Oh, that's the scissors that melt.
That's the scissors, yeah.
So there's these ones here, and the ones up front. And the ones up front and the ones at the very back are definitely scissored in the same way. And I believe these are scissored through this, but
yep,
it's difficult to really see that. Now, I suspect these outriggers here are part of the AI, like controlling height and like whiskers effectively. However, why you would need whiskers in this is kind of weird, unless you're going for canyons.
And why they would need to be so huge.
And also, why are you taking this giant thing through a canyon?
I think they're actually cranes for resupplying.
Very possibly
yeah,
as well.
It looks like they rotate in and out.
I can't zoom any further than this.
Of course, why would they
they're like telescoping, and they also like rotate a little, but they couldn't rotate towards the front that much, so they can
That
rotate.
would make more sense, actually. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what this bay is for. Why they have these random window sections, and even
just
this.
for looking out. Oh no, I know. That's for when it's on a dock.
True. Yeah, you're gonna have
level of the dock. You know, that reminds me of the Hermes and the Invincible British carriers. They had those.
Somewhat, yeah. I can't remember offhand how they looked. I'll have to look at that later. But I know some carriers have these big spaces, which I'd have to look up why they're there.
I mean, one thing that we have to know is that this is larger than a Nimitz class carrier.
Oh,
and it doesn't have exterior elevators. It has like inside of the flight deck elevators, because every craft is a VTOL, and
here and here are takeoff, here and here recovery, and the additional areas there.
True.
And then that's an additional one there.
That the air wing in these carriers is smaller than that of a Nimitz, because of, you know, this is also carrying and maintaining land vehicles.
I believe it's 15 fighters. I think it's 5 bombers and 3 gunships.
3 gunships.
Yeah, but you can only launch 3 of each at any time. Recovery is different, obviously. Now, out the back here is where the vehicles pop out. All the ground vehicle types pop out from here.
Yeah. And that's an interesting feature, because the it has a door, like that big gate,
And a hidden
then
rampy bit.
yes, and
But
a
the ramp is just dropping down effectively. I
Mm-hmm.
can't show you underneath it, sadly. But it kind of
yeah.
just literally drops. It doesn't extend out. It kind of just drops down and unfolds.
Mhm.
And this kind of, I believe, it folds upwards. I can't remember offhand.
I think it does, yeah.
Looks like it would, yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to point out with this, I'm going to have to switch these around a little bit.
Light attack vehicle.
Look at the
in
turret
service.
there, and then we go to
Artillery cruiser
looking at the scale of the Gatling turret here. So it's just a bit about the size of a person. We hit the carrier. That's not the size of a person. That's
That's pretty big, yeah.
like, yeah.
It's, I mean, it looks like a phalanx, but that thing is like a building of a phalanx.
Yeah. It's like Phalanx's Big Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then you think about it, there's only a handful of these around and they rip through the other vehicles, so that makes a bit more sense. I would have expected a lot more defensive systems in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it does have missiles and stuff around, but still. And these are tracks, spare track units, which is a nice touch, because if you think about the size of these things, however, the lack of crane here is a concern.
Yeah.
Slight problem.
I mean, even the Hermes carrier had a crane on the flight deck level.
Yeah. Yeah. But these are just huge. They are literally mobile cities. You're looking at 1,000+ people here. Every facility you can think of, including the factories, including hangar deck, for the aircraft that are sustained within it. And then once you build and deploy the other vehicles, you supply them as well, whatever they need at the time. So huge storage element in there as well.
And I think
Housing,
the original. No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
accommodation and such.
All the bars you would need.
Yeah. All the spice bars too, you know, all the desert spice. And it's interesting that they do this with the traditional, Terran traditional naval bridge. But you don't really see much glass in it. But then again, they're kind of far away, so
Just on the top.
yeah. Interesting thing I noticed here. Little population.
Yeah. It has the I forgot how that's called. The catapult operator thing.
I don't remember offhand.
It
I
has a
I
name.
don't know.
It has a name. I forgot. Never mind.
I mean, this looks like the recovery deck might have an arrestor system, but we're way too far out to see.
I see 3 blue things on the, both sides of it.
Yeah.
And
could
usually there's, 3 cables, if I'm not mistaken, on
Yes, I
carriers.
believe so, yes.
So
That's assuming
maybe
it's coming in
that's-
from this direction and not the other direction.
I thought, why?
I also wonder why this is cut off there in many respects.
Yeah, I was about
Yeah.
to mention that. Like, you want to have that extending out. from the
Yeah, it really
carrier, that's-
doesn't need to be cut off.
Yeah, that's not cut off. No.
I mean, it
and
extends
it's not a-
here.
Look at the back.
The
Yeah,
back is fine.
It extends here, but why doesn't it not extend the extra bit there? It just feels
It's gonna
weird.
mess with anybody who has to use the full runway to get off.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a really interesting setup and the cross thing as well.
Here's the thing. All aircraft here are VTOL, and usually the idea is when you're launching an aircraft that is fully loaded, you use a catapult, and when they're coming back, they can land vertically
because they have less payload, less fuel.
Yeah, exactly. But this one has apparently the arrestor wires, and it also has the angle deck, which it's done like that to extend the runway length to allow for faster craft to land. So maybe that's is used like that to receive cargo planes for resupply.
I was gonna say it's probably
True,
more
but
for the
if
civilian craft.
Runway has
Yeah.
to go that far out. Why would you cut part of it off?
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's.
I guess maybe
it's- Yeah, it's like the only reason to have the runway that far out is if you're gonna use it.
It's okay. Let's ignore this because this is just a weird thing, and I don't think that it's
I guess they thought it was
going to be
cool,
explained. I mean, it's something we could ask the devs, but I doubt anyone would get a response on that. This is an interesting thing, but now in some of the other things, they're the modular upgrades you can get, but I'm curious what some of these elements are, or whether they're just decorative.
The big one, that door is a missile silo, and it looks like
This
the
one?
missile silo of a nuclear thing,
cruise.
an ICBM.
Oh, it's that
Cruise
one.
missiles.
Okay then. And these white bits?
No idea, but I know the squares where you have the black and yellow lines are to build modules,
Yeah,
and
so
that's
these
directly from Homeworld 2, in which you had that on the top of the
that
carrier.
big one there.
Mhm.
Because
One
Homeworld
thing to
2 also
know-
had you target the modules as well.
Yeah. Is that it has elevators for the catapult, and then the elevators to land are different.
They're free
So the
to
launch-
take off, free
yeah.
to recover, and then there's the extra elevator at the back here.
Yes.
Um,
But is that for other craft, or is that for
Don't
for
remember
like
in
ammunition and? Because I know
It's
carriers have like
smaller.
ammunition elevators.
it's These look more or less the same size.
Mhm.
This, I don't angle this correctly. It looks slightly smaller.
That must be for like the vehicles and the like any service vehicles on flight deck, or like ammunition.
Possibly. I'm trying to remember if there was in the story any particular craft that came to see the thing, but I don't remember.
Yeah, me neither.
Because that could have been a factor in it. It is weird that they've shown this with the crane sticking out, which is probably why I was thinking there were more whiskers.
Mm.
Because they haven't done it with anything else.
Because the crane looks like it can like telescope in and then fold into that place.
It looks like it can, telescope in and out to 3 segments, but it also looks
Yeah,
like it
and
doesn't
then-
need to. And they don't have much. Well, I guess with the height of the vehicle anyway, you don't need much.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing that got me is you got a limit to how tall cargo you can
Yeah.
lift.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
also,
it-
if you have a big ramp on the back, you can just like pop the ramp down and then drive the
Drive
stuff in.
everything on, yeah.
Hmm.
That might just be there to help service small craft.
Yeah,
No,
I think so.
I think I know what it is. You remember that it can repair other vehicles if you do the thing?
Oh, is that the repair rays?
It could
Am I
be
right?
that actually.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
I don't. I'm not 100% sure because I'm pretty sure there's specific angles that those come out from.
Yeah, we should activate that in game, like when we're playing, and see
We'll have
see
to
where
have
it
a
comes
look.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next time we're in.
Mhm.
But we are past the 2-hour mark, so I would like to wrap this soon.
Yes.
And we can come back to the Gaalsien next time. Maybe next weekend. Hopefully next weekend, but we shall see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I don't know why. Could you possibly explain why there are little wing mounts here?
To make it go faster, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say make it go faster. You
Okay.
need that downforce.
That
it's-
totally. Maybe it's for steering.
Mm.
It's the most vertical wing mounted thing that the game has.
The game has, yeah.
That's great when your carrier has more vertical stabilizers than your aircraft.
True.
Oh, yeah. It's got technically this is also a sail. The bridge.
The
Yeah.
island.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's
Yeah,
it's a sail.
I think
element
it's
as
called
well.
sail on submarines and
Submarines, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the massive headlights.
Oh yeah.
You will see me coming. Yeah.
I wonder if it has a
Well,
honk.
if you can't see it coming, you're gonna hear it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and
that's
it's
exactly
got
wait.
what-
Do
it's
that again. Like that's the. Do you go through the plane of the?
Yeah, I'm through the ground right now.
Yeah.
We're not talking about that really.
I also
Yeah.
like how they have a grill protector on it in case it has to ram somebody.
Oh yeah, this is kind of like an entire
Ramming speed.
I don't know, like an armored plate on the front.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Could be useful for dunes,
That would be
Yeah,
my
like
expectation.
skiing.
I would fully expect this to cut through dunes and not just
Yeah.
go over them, especially smaller ones.
I wouldn't so much call it cutting as bulldozing.
Mhm.
Yes, yeah.
Because, yeah, this doesn't seem to be the sharp implement of cutting destruction.
Yeah.
More just headbutt anything in the way.
This island looks a little too close if I'm landing,
Mm-hmm.
angle-wise. Because I'm landing from here, it's not so great. If I'm landing from this side, yeah, that's probably fine actually. Still probably a little close, closer than I would like if I was designing it. But practical, I guess the craft themselves are not particularly big if they're fitting on these.
Mm-hmm.
For most of the craft, in theory, you could have two landing side by side. Not that you would want to do that.
I mean, looking at a real carrier, it is. Well, yeah, it is kind of far away, and it angles away from the island.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, landing in this way is not so bad if there's an instant somewhere in there. Also, those blue lines are here. I just realised as well.
Ah, yeah.
They're all the way along, so they're just lights.
Through the lights.
I mean, the arrestor could be along this yellow or the hazard.
Between the two yellow lines, I guess.
Well, there's a specific yellowy orange bar here,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be on either of these two hazard lines, or potentially in here if there is an arrestor. But I don't think the planes had visible arrestor connections.
No.
Plus, the
think
fighters
maybe-
don't have landing gear.
Yeah,
So-
I think that maybe they just do like I said, maybe for like cargo planes or something like that, and they just do like some kind of like retroborn with their Beetles or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I am surprised this does not launch drones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'd think something this big, they'd just have a tiny drone base somewhere on it, but
True.
nope. Yeah. And something this big, I think, would need drones to scout out ahead to see what it. You plan the route from this hours to days in advance, kind of thing, because you don't have much of a turning circle. Well, you kind of do have a turning circle, but you don't have much maneuverability per se.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not something you can really hide. You can try. I mean, maybe if you go back and forth a little, you'll dig yourself a hole in the dunes, and you know, possibly. For how you'd ever get out of it is a whole different ball game.
True.
Unless you could somewhat use these guys to step out of it. You know?
Like lift it off the ground and then like John was saying, like they have the NASA crawler. They're kind of like
Yeah, well, because you've got
Walks
6
with
limbs
legs.
effectively there. You've got obviously 2 at the front, 4 at the back.
yeah, like centipede your way out of it.
Possibly. Or using these 2 at the front and then these 2 to lift up, and then you sort of slide back and these 2 are still next to the hull, and then they kind of land, and then you're literally stepping out of it.
Yeah. Like that, like the quadrupedal in this case, like
Yeah, but you're going
hexapedal-
backwards instead of forwards.
hexapedal.
I'm just imagining this massive thing standing up on
Walking.
its tracks, walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure this.
Just seeing that from a distance, this 500-meter carrier just walking around on giant legs.
Well, what would be weirder, seeing it from a distance or being one of the 1,000+ crew that's in it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like-
imagine that would be
that would be
shake
so
around quite a
seasick.
bit.
Yeah, or desert
I
sick, or
think
whatever it is.
each one would be, I guess it would be less weird on board and more just not, like you said, nauseating.
Yeah. Alright, I think we should wrap here and
Yes.
come back another time for the Gaalsien stuff.
All right.
Alright, thank you everyone for being with us today. Thank you to Marcelo, and thank you to Bragondorn.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
Quite enjoyable.
And see you next time.